Good morning, Alan Mayer here, once again, retired Anglican priest, taking us through the Bible in 365 short Bible studies. At the moment, we are looking at the exile in Babylon and the return at the end of that exile. And today we have an interesting piece of writing by Ezekiel, encouraging the old, poor Jewish exiles to believe that there will be a better day, and he introduces us to the idea of resurrection. God said to me, "Mortal man, listen. I want you to speak divine wisdom to the wind, to the spirit. Tell the air that Yahweh, its sovereign, is giving it a command. Come from all directions and breathe life into these dead bodies. Bring them back to life." I did as I'd been told, and the Spirit came into the bodies. As they breathed, they stood up, enough to form an army. God said to me, "Listen, mortal man. The people of Israel are just like these bones. They say they're dried up, hopeless, with no future. So speak divine wisdom to my people Israel. Tell them that I, Yahweh, their sovereign, will open their graves. I'm taking them out of the ground and bringing them back to Israel. When I open the graves where my people are buried and fetch them out, they will know that I, Yahweh, exist. I will breathe my spirit into them and bring them back to life. I'll allow them to live in their own land, and they will know it is Yahweh who has done this. I promised I would, and I will. I really mean it." For many decades, the people had been in exile, which lasted about 70 years. For those who had been deported in the first exile that began in 605 BC, although it was a shorter ordeal for those who came to Babylon after the destruction of the temple nearly two decades later in 586 BC. 70 years means that many who were deported would have died in exile. And many of those who did return had been born in exile, and they were going to a place they had never known. Captivity, even if it is humane, even if it gives people opportunities to adapt and give in, does place limits on those held captive. They had got used to being there. Some had ingratiated themselves and risen high in the service of the Babylonian and later the Persian empires, but still there was something holding them back, something stopping them being properly alive. They were dead inside, like this metaphorical valley shown to us by Ezekiel, strewn with bones long after a battle has taken place there. In startling imagery, he has taken us to this place, and he tells us that God is ordering the bones to reassemble themselves, clothe themselves in flesh once again. And now he orders the wind, the breath, the spirit, all the same word in Hebrew, to breathe life into them once again. The bones are, of course, the exiles themselves, spiritually, morally, psychologically dead in their own graves long before their time. Soon the political and military situation is going to change in a startling way. And these people will be required to stand up like an army, to reoccupy their land, not now as dead bones, but as living people with a future and a hope. The Christian belief in the resurrection of Jesus and the resurrection hope of his people also begins here. Not for us the shadowy gloom of life in Sheol, we believe in a resurrection life that is rich and full of blessing. For we must not forget that eternal life has already begun for us here on earth, and so we need to keep in mind that there remain people who are like these bones, dead, depressed, living without hope or expectation, who continue to need to hear these words. They need saving not after death, but now. They too need to hear Ezekiel's divine wisdom and feel its power. What happened next is recorded in the rather mixed up and disordered texts that form the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Many scholars of these texts say that the stories recorded there cannot be in chronological order, but they are recorded in order of the event's importance to the survivors. Power was shifting from Babylon to Persia. Cyrus of Persia had defeated Babylon in battle in 539 BC, and this gave rise to a change of policy regarding the exiles, and a return to what was now being called Israel was permitted. For some reason, Cyrus's successor Artaxerxes was indulgent towards one of his officials, who was the Jew Nehemiah. Sent to Jerusalem by Artaxerxes, he took with him financial and logistic help, as well as some military support. It looks likely that the priest Ezra returned after that when it was safe, and brought back with him what looked like completed or nearly completed scriptural texts. From tomorrow, we shall conclude this part of the story by seeing what Isaiah said about it, and then what happened with Ezra and Nehemiah. See you tomorrow.